The next thing I wanted to talk about was this interesting nexus that's developing between AI and nuclear power. Now, these are two things that don't obviously fit together, but this is one of these interesting second order effects. So, one of the big pieces of news in the last couple of weeks is that Microsoft signed an agreement to purchase nuclear power from a 3 Mile Island nuclear facility. Now, this is interesting, not because they've directly signed an agreement to buy energy. Data center providers have been doing that for a long time. I remember Google doing it back in the late 2000s. But 3 Mile Island, well, you may have heard of 3 Mile Island. It is the home of the most famous nuclear accident in North America. And what Microsoft is actually doing is putting money in to restart 3 Mile Island so that they can feed their hungry data centers for AI. So data centers have always been power hungry. And like I said, the big cloud providers have been inking their private power deals for a couple of decades now. But AI is another step change. It's probably another order of magnitude in terms of the power needs of data centers, which means that data centers are now really a major player in the global energy consumption mix. And this changes the dynamic for a couple of reasons, right? One is that the profile of power usage of data centers is different. It's very concentrated in a single location. It follows different sort of daily patterns than other forms of power usage. But the other is, frankly, money. We've talked at length, Chris, about the fact that AI has so much money behind it. And so when we see players like Microsoft and Amazon and Google actually being major players in the market for power, their economic clout means that actually things can change, right? And I think tech people, I'll say more generally, there's been a sort of a big pro-nuclear sort of movement within tech, especially in the last couple of years. I'm sad that it's become politicized in various ways, but the technology's advanced. I think renewables, especially solar, have shown immense strengths, but also certain weaknesses, and that nuclear could really be a part of the mix. And so I think it's really interesting now that it's not just tech people and their sort of point of view that is pro-nuclear, but that the needs of AI are pushing these major players directly into funding the nuclear power market. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been obvious for a long time, especially since, for me, Bill Gates started pushing this idea that nuclear is an essential part of the energy mix. These plants that everyone's afraid of, they were designed in the 40s and 50s and built in the 50s and 60s, and they're archaic. When you imagine nuclear power, you're imagining technology that is obsolete. We need nuclear power, and we need it based on technology designed in the 2010s and 2020s and plants built in the 2020s and 2030s. This is essentially safe, and it's essentially massive, cost-effective, abundant energy. It's time for us to actually properly enter the nuclear age, and not just with the damn weapons. And so, this is one of those things to me that seems obvious on the face of it and is just hung up based on dogma and fear and politics. And so, yeah, we need to do it. Now, if you want to talk about the ideal, and Elon Musk likes to do this, there is a giant fusion reactor in the sky. And yes, we can get more efficient at harvesting that reactor. And yes, if we did it well and we had the political will, we could create small patches of desert with solar power panels and whatever. And we should do that as well. But you can't beat the power density and certainty of nuclear, and let's just build some of the damn plants and plug into them. And I'm glad the tech industry is getting behind it, because we need to get off fossil fuels as fast as possible.
Yeah, I guess my point's a little bit more subtle than that, right? So I think it's not just about the idea of nuclear and, the fact that even with those old hulking reactors, it's a very safe technology, and every bit of data says that objectively, nuclear is much safer than coal or any other sources of power, even if you don't factor into account the climate change effect of fossil fuels. So it's not about that. But I think what is interesting is things like this Microsoft deal take it beyond the world of just people nodding and agreeing and saying we should do nuclear to trying to make it a reality with the clout that is needed, right? So I think you need two things, really, if you talk about the new technologies like small modular reactors and so on. One is you need a lot of money. Okay, check. The other thing is you need a lot of political influence. Why do I say that? Because one of the things that has really slowed down nuclear is a whole lot of regulation that makes it far, far more expensive to develop nuclear power plants than they might need to be. Now, I am not an anti-regulation person. I think good regulation is important. But as you say, Chris, the technology has changed. the regulation needs to keep up and support building these things and operating them in a safe way rather than just simply making it prohibitively expensive to do so. Now, who is really good at having political influence these days? It's actually tech companies, right? This piece of data is a couple of years old, but I think at least at one point may still be the case. Google has more lobbyists in Washington than any other single corporation. And the same is true of Microsoft, of Meta, of Amazon. These have a lot of political influence and political clout. So when you take that combination of money and politics, if these companies are economically incentivized, not just philosophically in favor of nuclear power, I could see things really starting to move in a way that otherwise I wouldn't have been particularly hopeful of.
All right, that's our thought on nuclear power and the future of energy production. What do you guys think? Is nuclear power the obvious and safe future for us all? Or should we just focus on solar power and other renewables and avoid all that toxic waste from nuclear? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.